Welcome everybody to Helping Homeless Students, the McKinney-Vento training. Before we start today, we wanted to introduce to you all of our coalition on homelessness that will be your host today. My name is Cristina Cabeza. I use she, they, you pronouns. I am the Operations and Programs Manager here at the coalition. Today we have Hallie Willis, who is our Community Policy Manager, who will be helping out as well, sharing some advocacy, and also on the tech side, if you need anything, to reach out. Also joining us will be Allison Eisinger, who is our Executive Director, and will be popping in here during our training. So, a little bit about Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. We mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. We envision a region that acts on a shared sense of responsibility to ensure that everyone has a home. We are motivated by and seek to live out our values of equity, justice, and collective action. We are community-powered membership. Our coalition is made up of agencies that provide housing, shelter, human services, healthcare, as well as allied organizations and individuals. We offer education through our membership meetings, which occur every third Thursday from 9 to 10:30 online. Sometimes we do it in person, and trainings like this for case managers and others doing the work. Coalition trainings help staff and frontline workers better navigate and advocate for access to state and federal public benefits such as TANF, SSI, Medicare, Medicaid, and SNAP. We help people know their voting rights and use them to shape our democracy. The coalition engages also in advocacy for good policies and budgets at the city, county, and state, and at the national level, where decisions like recent vicious cuts to food stamps or SNAP are made, and where the threat to $67 million for housing in our community comes from. We can and do organize to change those policies. We advocate because that is how we together can seek real solutions for homelessness, housing injustice, and for people experiencing housing instability. We recognize how much more strength and power we have when we truly act together. And we show up in spaces where we may support the dedicated people who are doing the amazing work you do every day to help families and individuals who are living unhoused and unstably housed. So we are glad that you're here with us today and to hear from our amazing group of presenters. I want to, in this time, share our deep gratitude for our presenters today, who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to share with you, including Emily Justin and Kimberly. Sorry, I don't have your last name in front of me. Kimberly with TeamChild. We're super excited to have you here today. Rosemary Peterson from the Office of Homeless Youth, who cannot be here today with us, and Amy Peruse from Everett Public Schools. We wish Rosemary the best. Due to a family emergency, she cannot be here today with us, but the materials from the Office of Homeless Youth that will be presented by TeamChild come from her and her work. So we want to honor that. Okay, so if we can share the agenda slide. Great. So here is today's agenda so we know the lay of the land. First, we are going to hear from TeamChild, Emily and Kimberly around McKinney-Vento 101, law, access to rights and services, how to locate the resources needed, including McKinney-Vento liaisons. We're going to also explore rights and how to be a good advocate, resolving disputes, and also we'll explore a few hypotheticals. We will have a specific time for Q&A, so there may be questions that come up. I'll leave it to Emily and Kimberly to navigate those, but do know that we do have specific time for that if you don't get a chance to have your question answered. And then we'll have an advocacy and collective power moment with our coalition and Hallie, so we can take all that we're learning and put some action behind what we can do in this moment together. And then we'll have a resource share. We have a few community organizations that we would love for you to know more about. And we will end with a post survey. Wanted to acknowledge that we got over 100 pre-surveys filled out, which is amazing. And we would also love to see what you learned during this time by filling out the post survey. And so hopefully we'll have a few minutes to do that together so that can get done and not another thing to do after the training. All right. So with that said, I am ready to hand it off to Emily and Kimberly to share today's presentation. And thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Hallie, I think if you could share the Rosemary's presentation is where we're going to start. Okay, perfect. You're already there. Okay, so like Christina said, my name is Emily Justin. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Senior Youth Homelessness Prevention Attorney at TeamChild. I just kind of want to give a caveat that this first portion are Rosemary's slides, and so bear with us a little bit since we will be kind of presenting on her information. So she shared a little bit about the Office of Homeless Youth, where she works, which is a great office that obviously helps young people prevent homelessness, ages 12 to 24. And a little bit more information about the Office of Homeless Youth here. And you can move on, Hallie. And then a little bit more about the Schoolhouse Connection, a great resource that provides early care and education, again, focused on ending the cycle of homelessness for young people and supporting them through school. You can move on. Okay, so today, this first portion of the presentation, we're going to be talking about child and youth homelessness in general and how Washington compares nationally. Obviously, the relationship of homelessness and education, the McKinney-Vento Act, of course, what's covered under McKinney-Vento, the role of McKinney-Vento liaisons, and then some basic protections. You can move on. Okay, so a little bit of some information of how Washington compares nationally. So nationally, there are 1.3 million school-age children that were identified as experiencing homelessness, which is about 3%, compared to Washington, which is about 4% of school-age children who are identified as experiencing homelessness, which, as you can see, during the 2024 to 2025 school year, that number rose by about 5,000. So just some information to see how Washington compares. You can move on. So where do these young people experiencing homelessness stay? So we can see a lot of these young people are staying with others temporarily. Sometimes that is called doubling up, where families are staying either with other family members or friends or just kind of other roommates. There are young people staying in shelters and transitional housing. A smaller number who are simply just unsheltered, and some others that are staying in hotels and motels. And you can kind of see how Washington compares pretty similar to the national, but some differences. And so the general theme for these young people who are experiencing homelessness is they're likely moving between all of these situations very frequently. So they might be staying couch surfing with friends one night and then maybe staying at a shelter another night and kind of going through sort of all of these areas and obviously not staying in one stable place. Um, what is kind of happening in these communities is there are typically a lack of adequate resources in shelters, or families fear shelter due to safety concerns, or sometimes the barriers into getting into these shelters are too high, such as, a lot of shelters not accepting pets. And I think I can definitely relate that I would not want to leave my dog and cat. And so those are some of the barriers that these families are facing. And also just kind of the lack of motels and hotels and community-based organizations. And there's just a lack of financial resources to support in these living situations. And yes, this last kind of point that children and youth who are living doubled up are extremely vulnerable to exploitation and harm and often go unidentified. Sometimes, if these young people are staying together, couch surfing, doubling up, they're probably not being identified as experiencing homelessness and therefore, losing out on some of the services and supports that might be available to them. Next slide. So again, comparing Washington to the national numbers, I won't go into all of these, but you can kind of see where Washington stands compared to the national numbers of demographics of who these young people are who are experiencing homelessness. Um, and I won't go into all of them, but you guys can kind of take a look for another second. And we can go to the next slide. So this is kind of a graphic of a cycle of what's happening, what the barriers are, what they lead to, and sort of how it kind of cycles into each other. So the barriers for young people experiencing homelessness and having access to education is the high mobility, so moving around a lot, moving school districts a lot, the trauma and fear that comes with experiencing homelessness, the invisibility of living outside or doubling up, high enrollment requirements. So even moving to a new school, having to navigate even enrolling into that school. Probably these young people experiencing homelessness are also experiencing hunger, sleep issues, lack of access to healthcare and other things, or they might be also caring for their siblings and parents. And some of these barriers can lead to declining enrollment and being out of school, chronic absenteeism, mental health challenges, of course, lower graduation rates, and lower post-secondary enrollment. And like this bottom note explains that a lack of a high school degree or GED is the single greatest risk factor for young adult homelessness. And so you can kind of see how these barriers lead to young people being out of school, which leads to them having or not being able to complete high school, get a GED, which then leads to more chronic homelessness. Next slide. So again, how Washington compares. These numbers, you can see that Washington fares a little bit worse than the national average, that Washington has a higher chronic absenteeism rate for both homeless and all students in general, and a lower high school graduation rate. And so I don't have answers onto why that is, but just something to note that Washington is different than the national average in these ways. You can move on. So the McKinney-Vento Act, in general, these are just kind of some background information, was passed in 1987, named after Representatives Stuart McKinney and Bruce Vento. It was last updated in 2015, and it applies to all local educational agencies, or sometimes it might be referred to as an LEA, and public charter schools. And then that is the statute that it's enshrined in. And the goal of the McKinney-Vento Act is to ensure the identification, enrollment, and success in school, including preschool, for children and youth experiencing homelessness. And there's a note, and I think that we'll talk about this a little bit later too, that Congress approved funding for early care education, housing, and homelessness programs on February 3rd, including continued support for the McKinney-Vento Act, which is good that McKinney-Vento Act still exists. We can move on. And in Washington State, just this year, we codified McKinney-Vento Act in our state statute. So it is a federal law, and now also it is codified in Washington state law. Very similar to the federal McKinney-Vento Act. It's an act relating to ensuring that unhoused children and youth in Washington have equal access to the same free, appropriate public education that is provided to other children and youth. Which is great. So allows for more consistent and uniform implementation of McKinney-Vento across the state and directs OSPI to share information regarding homeless youth with the legislature. You can move on. So now into sort of the definition of homelessness under the McKinney-Vento Act, which is kind of the bread and butter of the McKinney-Vento Act. So the definition is children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. So what does that mean exactly? On the right are kind of all of the examples of what is included under that definition. So like we talked about earlier, sharing housing due to loss of housing. So being doubled up, couch surfing, living in motels, hotels, trailer parks, camping grounds, those kind of truly temporary places that are meant for temporary living. Living in emergency or transitional shelters or abandoned in hospitals are all included in the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness. Living in public or private places not designated or ordinarily used as regular sleeping accommodations, living in cars, parks, abandoned buildings, substandard housing, bus or train stations, or other similar settings. And there is some guidance on what the definition of substandard is. And then migratory children living in any of the above situations. So really going back to the definition, it is what you think of when it's a young person who is not in a fixed, regular, adequate residence. So it's a truly temporary place that they are at. You can move on. And then slightly different is the definition of an unaccompanied homeless youth. So this is a homeless child or youth that is not in the physical custody of a parent or guardian. And so in order to qualify or be eligible for McKinney-Vento services, just being unaccompanied is not enough. They also have to be experiencing homelessness that is covered under the definition that we just talked about. And so a guardianship or custody issue alone does not qualify a student for McKinney-Vento services. And I will pass to Kim for the next portion of this.
Thanks, Emily. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a staff attorney at TeamChild, and I primarily work in the King County office. So we're gonna first talk about student rights. And I know for some of you, this may be very redundant or you've heard this over and over, but especially for me as an attorney, when I am assisting students, this is the first place that I start. What are the student rights? In this slide, we're just basically looking at what are those core rights that are provided under the McKinney-Vento Act. And I think the most important point to remember is that a student's housing situation should not become a barrier to them receiving an education. All students in the state of Washington have a right to a free and appropriate public education. Doesn't matter where they live. And for youth that are experiencing homelessness is really important because it shouldn't be a barrier to enroll. So when you think of like the documents that you have to provide to a school to normally enroll, those barriers should not exist for young people experiencing homelessness. This is particularly important for families and youth who may not have access to birth certificates, immunization records, proof of residence. You have some folks who may be coming from another state and don't have immediate access to these things. And I think people sometimes don't realize how difficult it can be for people to access, especially, in the work that we do, we work with a lot of unaccompanied youth, and just getting a birth certificate can be so difficult. So it's important to remember that they have the right to enroll. And when we say the right to enroll, that means also attend classes before having to provide those documents. It doesn't mean that they'll never provide them, but it means that that should not be a barrier for them to attend school. They also have the right to attend their school of origin, which we'll get deeper into, which is really important to young people. Transportation is also another important protection. And students are entitled to comparable educational services and have access to academic and extracurricular opportunities without barriers. And this is really important for young people. So the bottom line is housing instability should not prevent a student from enrolling, attending, participating, and succeeding in school. Next slide, please. And so this next slide focuses on the role of McKinney-Vento liaisons, which we have a lot here today, it looks like. So federal law requires that each local education agency, which is basically like a school district, to designate a staff member who serves as the liaison for students experiencing homelessness. And the liaison is essentially the person responsible for helping make sure that protections we are discussing today are implemented at the local level, which is really helpful now that we have it codified in Washington, as Emily mentioned, just last June. So that's really great. So there are 10 major areas of responsibility listed here. And at the end of this slide, there are posters that Schoolhouse Connection has created so that you can place them up in your school if you don't already have them. But the 10 major areas of responsibility for McKinney-Vento liaisons are identification, meaning making sure students experiencing homelessness are identified, including through coordination with other agencies and community organizations. Second is enrollment. Again, once a student is identified, the liaison helps make sure that that student can enroll and has a full and equal opportunity to succeed. The third is identification of young children and referrals to early childhood programs. So this is important because McKinney-Vento protections extend beyond traditional K through 12 enrollment and can include connections to appropriate early learning and preschool services. And we know how important that is for early development. Fourth is community referrals. The liaison connects students and families with services that they may need beyond the school setting, such as health, housing, or other community resources. So trainings like these are really important so we can make those connections with each other. Fifth is full participation. The goal isn't simply to just get a student enrolled, but students need to have the same opportunities to participate and succeed as their peers. So that includes extracurricular activities. Six is outreach and awareness. Schools need to make sure students and families know about their rights and that school personnel understand the impact of homelessness on students. And this is really important because you could have students who, at the start of the school year may not be experiencing homelessness, but may later on. So it is important that families know about their rights. So if they are in a situation, they know that they have rights and resources available. Seventh is policies and dispute resolution. There are sometimes disagreements when it comes to enrollment. We have the McKinney-Vento Act, we have these laws outlined, but we know implementation can also look very different. And so when disagreements occur about enrollment or where school placement should be, the liaison has an important role in making sure the dispute resolution process is followed. Eighth is transportation. The liaison helps ensure that families and unaccompanied youth understand their transportation rights and can access available transportation services. And ninth is professional development. Staff need to understand how homelessness can affect students and how to respond appropriately. And finally, the liaison has responsibilities related to unaccompanied youth. Students who are experiencing homelessness and are not in the physical custody of a parent or a guardian have some extra rights that need to be protected. So when we think about the McKinney-Vento liaison, we should think beyond the title of just liaison. The person is really a coordinator and an advocate, problem solver, and connector who helps remove barriers for students experiencing homelessness. And so they are very important in our schools, and we appreciate the work that you all do tremendously. Next slide, please. So every K through 12 school must designate a building point of contact. So basically what that means is under Washington law, a building point of contact applies to elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And they're appointed by the principal, and they're responsible for identifying students experiencing homelessness or unaccompanied homelessness and connecting those students with the district's homeless students liaison. And this is an important expansion of the previous requirement. Before this legislation, the requirement applied to districts that had identified more than 10 unaccompanied youth and focused mainly on like middle school and high school students. But Senate Bill 5324 expanded that requirement so that every K through 12 public school has a building point of contact. And the purpose really is just to make sure that there's someone at the school who can recognize when a student may need McKinney-Vento support. Next slide, please. And so there may be some kind of glitch with the PowerPoint, but basically, this is just going over the basic protections that young people have under the McKinney-Vento Act, which is school stability, which we talked about, transportation, immediate enrollment, removing barriers, and then we'll go into some things specific to unaccompanied youth. Next slide, please. So, school stability for academic success. This one is really important. And basically, what it's referring to is about keeping the student in their school of origin for the duration of homelessness and until the end of the academic year in which the student becomes permanently housed, or a student can enroll in their local school of where they may be couch surfing or residing. There is a presumption in favor of the school of origin as well as what the family or unaccompanied youth wishes. And so I think this is something I see play out a lot because it requires a lot of intentionality, especially when you think of young people who have been going through a lot of high mobility, moving around. There is so much instability. And so sometimes school is that one place of stability. And so having that right to keep the student in their school of origin becomes really, really important. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about keeping a young person in their school of origin, that is where transportation becomes really important. And it's really critical under the McKinney-Vento Act. And so I've worked with a lot of young people who maybe, for example, staying in a shelter in Auburn, but their school is in Bellevue. Um, their school has to provide transportation to their school of origin. And so where it becomes important, where young people have a say, I've had clients, even though they've have to get up at 5 in the morning because their Uber comes at 6 to take them to school, but it's still just that important for them to remain in their school of origin so they can be with their friends and have some place of stability. They already have teachers and counselors that they have built relationships with. And so they want to remain in those schools. And so it is important that transportation is provided and they're still allowed to attend their school of origin, because a lot of times where they're residing, even though it may be out of district, that's just a temporary place to stay. And so those situations, transportation is really important. And when it comes to transportation, a barrier can be to also participating fully in school, meaning extracurricular activities. And so I've had students where they have a pretty set schedule, like they know the Uber's going to pick me up from the shelter at 6 in the morning, and they're going to pick me up from school at 3 o'clock. But if they communicate with their transportation services when they know they have extracurricular activities, they can arrange to have their driver pick them up later. And so it all works out. And so it's really important to know that transportation can be a barrier, but can easily be resolved with the proper communication. Next slide, please. And so earlier we talked about the right to enroll in school immediately. And I repeat this because when I'm working with young people, and usually they're coming to our agency because they're saying, I'm experiencing these things and I'm having trouble getting into school. So again, yes, we have the McKinney-Vento Act and we have these laws, but implementation, as we all know, can look very differently and vary across school districts, vary, from different cities. And so it's really important that we are all on the same page and understand what the students' rights are. And the right to enroll to school immediately is very important. Again, as I mentioned, a lot of times families or young people don't have access immediately to school records, to birth certificates, immunization records, all of those things that are required to enroll in school. And so being able to enroll immediately and provide those things later are very important. And oftentimes what I found, especially if the student has attended different schools in the state of Washington, it's usually easy for us to get those records from the different school districts and provide them on. And so just understanding that there are a lot of young people who are unaccompanied, meaning they don't necessarily have a guardian who is enrolling them into school. And so those students have the right to enroll in school immediately. And I am really happy that, the state of Washington has codified these things this year, because there have been times where I have went to school with young clients who are unaccompanied and had to explain to the school, like, they have to be enrolled immediately. They are an unaccompanied minor. And I think in past times, people were really confused by that term. Like, what do you mean unaccompanied? But there are a lot of unaccompanied young people who are escaping abuse in the home or different things. And so school is still really important. We know that school connectedness matters in terms of keeping young people out of the criminal justice system and making sure that, they become successful in their communities. So this right to enroll into school immediately is extremely, extremely important for young people. And as I stated before, it also includes attending classes and participating fully in school activities. Their housing status should not be a barrier to those things. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so removing barriers, as you know, I've been talking about this whole time, this just really focuses on the responsibility of all of us to actively remove barriers for students experiencing homelessness. The law requires schools and districts to develop, review, and revise policies so that barriers to identification, enrollment, and retention are addressed. This includes looking beyond obvious barriers. For example, outstanding fees, fines, or absences should not prevent a McKinney-Vento student from enrolling or remaining in school. We also need to think about barriers to participation once the student is enrolled. McKinney-Vento students should have meaningful access to academic and extracurricular opportunities, including programs such as summer school, career and technical education, advanced placement, online learning. All of these things should be available to students. So the question for schools is not simply, can this student enroll? We should also ask, what might prevent this student from fully participating and succeeding once they are enrolled? So removing those barriers means looking at the entire educational experience of a student. Next slide, please. And again, earlier I mentioned that there are provisions specific to unaccompanied youth. I think at TeamChild, we probably work a lot with unaccompanied youth. And so I have a lot of experience of just what that looks like in terms of implementation. And so, as I mentioned before, the right to immediate enrollment without proof of guardianship is really, really important. And assistance from local homeless education liaisons to select school of attendance, whether the local attendance area or school of origin. And one thing I want to point out, which I've seen a lot lately, is what we do, especially with unaccompanied youth on the K through 12 level, really plays out when they enter into college and can have impacts on getting financial aid. And so getting that McKinney-Vento verification can be really important later on. Next slide. So these next slides are basically just the resources that Rosemary had outlined that are available. These are resources provided by OSPI and by the Office of Homeless Youth. They'll all be provided in the materials that you'll receive after this presentation. So probably the remainder of the slides are all resources that are available. I will say Schoolhouse Connection is a really good source of resources. I know in the pre-registration questionnaires, there were a lot of really good questions, and a lot of those are answered on Schoolhouse Connection's website. They have a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of resources available for you. So I think we can finish out this presentation. Thank you.
Can we just have like 5 more minutes? So I'm wondering if we want to put on the hypos and maybe just make a quick note of maybe the appeals process and then go into hypos, or
I think that's a good idea.
okay. So Hallie, we can go to the TeamChild training and maybe go to slide 12. And while that's getting up there. I think that we can send out all of these slides, so anything that we didn't cover, you all can see. But one thing I wanted to note is just immigration status and how that plays a role in the McKinney-Vento law. And no matter immigration status, a young person experiencing homelessness is eligible for McKinney-Vento and should have access to all of those services. So just wanted to make that quick note that I know that that's on a lot of people's minds right now. But yes, there is no immigration status requirement for McKinney-Vento. And so I think Hallie, if we can go to slide 12, which is the appeals process under the McKinney-Vento Act. A lot of this is repeat of what we've already talked about, so you're not missing too much. Okay, so I think next slide, Kim, maybe just a quick overview of the appeals process, if you're okay with that.
Yes. And I think it's 2 more slides from this. Yes. And sorry, I am a talker. I'm a lawyer, so we talk a lot. So I apologize in advance. But the dispute resolution process we have outlined here, the McKinney-Vento Act does provide important protections when a dispute occurs. And basically, a disagreement might involve which school a student should attend, whether they should attend their school of origin or local school, whether the student can enroll at all, or whether the student meets the definition of homelessness. And so there are 3 parts to the appeals process. First, at level 1, the appeal is made to the McKinney-Vento liaison, and a request for dispute resolution must be filed within 15 days of receiving a written denial. So the days are always very, very important to pay attention to when it comes to disputing any type of resolution. If the issue is not resolved at level 1, the individual can proceed to level 2, which is an appeal to the school district superintendent. And so at the level 2 appeal must be submitted within 10 business days of receiving the level 1 decision. And so the superintendent must then arrange a personal conference within 5 business days. If the dispute after that remains unresolved, there is a level 3 appeal, which involves OSPI, and the appeal must again be submitted within 10 days of receiving the level 2 decision. And at this level, OSPI reviews the matter and makes a final decision. And so these deadlines are really important to pay attention to. And I think a lot of people probably assume, like, what's the point of appealing under the McKinney-Vento Act? But I would state, as I stated before, when it comes to secondary education, so once they're in college, it can affect their financial aid. So we have seen students who were denied McKinney-Vento status. They didn't fight it necessarily because they got to stay at their school and they're like, what's the big deal? But it became a big deal when they entered college, and financial aid is saying we need proof that you had McKinney-Vento status in high school when filling out the FAFSA, because there are different requirements. You can apply as an independent, and you usually have more financial opportunities that way. And so we've seen students who didn't appeal when they were experiencing homelessness during high school, and then we have to use different methods to prove that they were experiencing homelessness. So it is important, for people, there is a dispute resolution process, and so take advantage of that process. And I will end it there so we can get into the hypotheticals.
Thanks, Kim. So we can maybe start off our Q&A with the hypo, and it is for hypothetical 1, Hallie, if you can navigate to that one. So we wanted to kind of put in a typical scenario that we at TeamChild see and get some conversation going. So obviously, we're kind of at the end of our presentation time. So getting into Q&A, either put thoughts in the chat or raise your hand. And if we've got time for discussion, then I personally really love that. So I will kind of go over the hypothetical and then we can kind of talk about options, advocacy, strategies, all of those sorts of things. So Bryce is 17 years old and is currently incarcerated at the King County Juvenile Detention Center. He is eligible to be released from detention while awaiting trial, but he doesn't have housing to release to. Prior to being incarcerated, Bryce was attending Highline High School and couch surfing with his friends. While incarcerated, Bryce has been attending school at the detention center that is administered by Seattle Public Schools. Bryce was able to secure a bed at Cocoon House in Everett, where he can stay until he turns 18. Shout out to Cocoon House. I think I saw somebody from there here. Bryce felt very supported at Highline and would like to finish out the school year there despite the commute, since he only has a couple of credits left before he graduates. So, a couple of things to think about. So, what school is considered Bryce's school of origin? So, again, what is the school he was last attending when he was permanently housed? And with that, can he attend Highline High School, even if he's living in Everett? Will Bryce be able to get transportation to Highline from Everett? And finally, how would you advocate for Bryce in this situation? So if anybody has any initial thoughts, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. If I don't, I can leave a couple seconds of awkward silence and then we can kind of just talk about it. That's a good thought, Kelly. I think for this specific hypo, I didn't really specify if the conflict that led to him being incarcerated happened at school. Totally possible, but I think that there is a lot of data. I think it's Treehouse on their website that has a lot of the information of how a disruption in school and meaning moving from one school to another has a huge impact on the young person's ability to graduate, finish high school, and kind of move on. And what I've seen sort of anecdotally in my work is I've had a client, she had one credit, about a month left of school that she needed to finish basically one class until she graduated. About a month before she graduated, she became homeless and had to move across the state because that's where there was housing available. It's now several months later, and she is still kind of, she had to move schools because it wasn't feasible for her to go back to her school of origin just because of the transportation. And she's set back several months now to be able to even graduate because of just the move of moving schools. But I think it's a totally fair idea that for some young people, moving schools and having a new start might be what they want.
And I saw someone in the chat ask, does the incarcerated school count as permanent housing school? And it depends. As in this hypo, the detention center, it's administered by Seattle Public Schools, but not all detention have a public school that's administered like a specific district. So it differs. So we will see young people who are in a juvenile detention center and they will be disenrolled from their school of origin and then placed into some school program. So it really differs on where they're being held at.
I am totally holding back right now because this is an everyday thing. So if
Yeah,
you want me to jump in,
please go for it. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
all right. So most of you probably heard I am the McKinney-Vento liaison here in Everett Public Schools, which is where Cocoon House is within our school district service area. So in a situation like this, I love what everybody is saying here in the chat, um, kind of looking at what's in the best interest of the child. That would be the key when we're looking at McKinney-Vento. First, we look at, does the student qualify for McKinney-Vento services? And absolutely, the student does. They were homeless before they entered the detention center, and they have nowhere to go upon their release. So going to a shelter, the student definitely qualifies for McKinney-Vento in every sense. They also qualify as an unaccompanied homeless youth. So these are the pieces I would be looking at as identifying. Highline would already probably have this student identified in their system. We would look at, most of the time, best interest of the student is to stay and not switch schools again, especially if he's getting close to graduating, which it looks like. Some of the questions that could potentially surface, somebody mentioned, was school a place where they were getting into trouble? Maybe, but they still have rights as if they are a stably housed student in Highline School District. If that means they need a behavior plan, we would look at that, make sure that everybody is safe as the student returns to school. Then we would set up the transportation. And somebody asked, would the school district split that transportation? And I'm sure we're going to get to that today. But yes, what would happen is Everett Public Schools would provide or pay for the transportation for the student to get to school in most cases. And then on the way back, Highline would bring the student back. The other things I would be looking at is, does the student have an IEP? Are they anticipated to need vocational training services after they graduate? Is that something we can provide for them? And what's that plan after they leave Cocoon House? We won't have all of those answers. At this point, I would say stay at Highline School District. Everybody is saying that's in the best interest. Provide the transportation and then support. And if something changes and it's not working out, then I would be talking with Cocoon House and we'd be doing a smooth transition to a program here in Everett.
Thank you, Amy. That was great. I think we just about covered this hypo, so we can, I think, move on to the general Q&A, if that sounds good for everybody. And let me, okay, this question, participation in extracurriculars, and is there a fund or a process to get a kid supplies for extracurricular activities, i.e. musical instruments, sports uniform, etc.? Amy, do you want to cover that one as well?
Sure. So this is going to be one of those, we want to remove the barriers for full participation for a McKinney-Vento student. So what we would do is we would look at what is the need, and then what are the resources available? And every school district is going to have a little bit different program for supplying this. You might have rentals where you would pay for a rental using your Title I funding, or if you have a McKinney-Vento grant, you might use that. First, we would probably look at, is there one that's a loaner instrument? We do have, that happens here in Everett quite often. We have processes set up here in Everett where most of our schools have loaner instruments. Sometimes we tap into the neighboring schools and we say, hey, we don't have one at this school. Do you have one somewhere in the district? So we're looking at what are the resources that already exist that are going to be the most affordable that would meet that need. And then if it ends up being a cost related to it, some districts might tap into donations that are received. We have a couple of folks here on this call that run our family resource centers here in Everett Public Schools. That could be something I might look into is, do you have any funds that could help with this? We have some agencies that partner with Everett Public Schools that will meet the gap needs for these students. Not every district has that. So depending on your district and depending on the building, they may have different resources available. So that's what we would do here. Field trips I see is also a question. And yes, field trips, if they are curricular, if they're related to academics and part of the requirement for a student that's in the McKinney-Vento program, we would go ahead and either waive those fees or we would cover them through a fund like I just mentioned. And we would make sure that these students are able to participate in field trips. Sometimes with field trips, there's also additional transportation that's needed, and we would address that transportation need if it's a barrier for the student attending. I would say probably the biggest issue is people not knowing that this support exists. So that's the piece where any kind of training for staff, training for schools, training for parents and agencies like those that are represented here, it's super important because if you don't know it exists, you don't even know to ask.
I would also add, we skipped over it due to time, but when you review the materials, there's a Dear Colleague letter that was issued August 4th. And so that's regarding additional funding on a case-by-case basis. So I would encourage you all to review that as well.
And there's a question in here about if there are limitations in distance or length of time that could disqualify a student from receiving transportation. Amy, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that there's like a set distance or time. I think what the standard they use is if it's feasible. So I think that that is going to have to be a conversation with the family, with the school district, to kind of understand what that means. But Amy, please fill in any gaps.
Yeah, that one is pretty surprising to most people. But if you're looking at certain other programs in school districts, they will put a time limit on how long a child could be in a commute. With the McKinney-Vento Act, that is not in there. It does use the term feasibility, and feasibility is determined by the district. Can we make it happen? And then we also look at, is it in the best interest of the child? So for a senior who's about to graduate, going a long way, that might make a lot of sense for that student, an older student who can handle the ride, or for a student who is thought to be at a temporary shelter for a very, very short time. Doesn't make sense for them to enroll in the new neighborhood school. We would look at things like that. And that's how we make that determination. And then we say, let's give it a try and see if we can make it work. We do have some parents who will just flat out say, no way, I will not have my child on a ride that's that long. And that is where we weigh in and say, you know your child better than we do. And we're going to honor that and help you enroll in your neighborhood school.
Thank you, Amy. It's so good to have you here to answer all of these questions. Monty, I see your question, I think might be a little outside the scope of McKinney-Vento, but I will say a couple of options are a HIB complaint, which is harassment, intimidation, or bullying complaint, and then also a safety plan or behavior plan that can kind of look many different ways. If you're interested in kind of a specific training on school discipline and rights of students around school discipline, we can definitely talk about that.
I also see somebody asked about parents who have said they have to notify of address changes 2 days in advance. That probably is a specific school district that was having trouble setting up transportation, perhaps. In our district, we have said that it can sometimes take a few days to get this set up. There is no set time frame. We are supposed to make this happen. The term is without delay. So that's where it gets difficult. And when you're experiencing a high volume, like at the start of the school year, return from a break, you can imagine that we've got not only our 20,000 students within our school district that we're trying to figure out how to arrange transportation for, but we also typically serve about 500 students from out of district who are living within our service area who need transported out. So it's a real challenge, and it doesn't always happen fast. We are doing this as quickly as we can, and the term is without delay. I usually tell parents, if you haven't heard about your route information within a few days, give me a call back and I'll check on it. Sometimes there's a glitch and a communication breakdown occurred, but we are working as quickly as possible, and transportation departments are making miracles happen every single day. So we do our best, and sometimes we can offer an alternate in the interim while they're setting up transportation routing with buses. And we might be able to do something like contract with Hop Skip Drive or provide a bus route or something in the interim. But we do look at what's going to be safe, what's going to make the most sense for the child, and then we do the best we can to make it happen as quickly as possible.
So I saw a question about teen mothers. Um, and I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but yeah, it is different from McKinney-Vento. I don't know. Does it mean that the teen mother is experiencing homelessness? Or I guess I would need more information to answer that question. In regards to young people who are staying with adults who are not family members, we see that often. There are different legal routes that young people can take. There is a power of attorney form that parents can sign to have someone who's not a family member be able to make educational decisions for their students. You can go to Washington Law Help and find that form. That's usually the easiest way to do it without like court involvement. Of course, there are mechanisms you can use that could take a long time, like minor guardianship that we often see. That's a court mechanism. So there are different ways that people who are not family members can make educational decisions for young people.
And I will add with that is a lot of school districts are now using their own forms, calling them something like a caregiver authorization form. There's also a form called a hold harmless. So in our district, this has been something that we've actually had to create a guide for how our staff are expected to utilize these forms and what to do if something like this is happening. So that is something that I helped put together last school year, and we now have it in place. But it can be a bit of a sticky situation, especially if you have an unaccompanied homeless youth who is staying out of the home and the parents are saying, we have a safe home. If they would just come back and sleep in their own bed and follow our rules, they would be just fine. And a lot of times as a McKinney-Vento liaison, I do get into that place where a parent would be very upset and say, you're aiding and abetting my child who's a runaway. And I have pretty much my script for your child has some rights under the McKinney-Vento Act. Here's what the law says. And aren't you glad that they're actually attending school while they're out of your home? Let me give you the number to Cocoon House, who has a great professional who can help walk you through some of your options as a parent. And I'm going to help support your child getting to school and removing barriers to them attending school while you work through this outside. And, it's one of those really difficult conversations. And as a parent, I've actually experienced it where my own child was a runaway. So I do have compassion for that. And it's a difficult thing. However, we want the child to graduate high school. We want to know that they're safe for a good portion of the school day, and then that they have support there at school so that they can open up, because we don't often know the rest of the story about what's going on in the home.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Emily, Kimberly. This has been really rich, a lot of different scenarios coming through and a lot of wisdom. So thank you so much. Before we move on to the next piece, is there anything else that you would like to share that hasn't been elevated so far before we move on to Hallie's advocacy? Okay. Well, I really appreciate the collaboration here between TeamChild and with Amy here as our McKinney-Vento liaison. I think you've highlighted that there are some things that are black and white, and there are also places where the accompaniment by people who are helping folks experiencing homelessness and instability is very important. And so I really appreciate that humanity brought in. And yeah, and we have lots of resources to share. One of them that I'll just share real quick in the chat is a um, shared from the Office of Homeless Youth. It's a K through 12 homeless education quick reference guide for McKinney-Vento 101. Great thing to print and post and have. But yes, resources are abundant here, and so grateful to share those today. And we will move on now with Hallie sharing some advocacy. Then we will have our resource share, which TeamChild will be part of that as well to come back in, and then we'll end our time today. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Christina. And I might ask for your help in adjusting our spotlighting. Thanks so much. And huge thanks to our presenters. You all have incredible knowledge and experience. We've got more than 100 people here with us today, and really am grateful for you joining us to make sure that kids who are experiencing homelessness can get what they need. And in addition to making sure that young people can access their educational rights, part of our work here at the Coalition is helping folks like you who are doing the work every day to connect people with the things that they need, is to help you speak up, to make changes to policy, to budgets, to make sure that everyone experiencing homelessness has better access to housing, shelter, food, school, medicine, and everything that they need to live and be well. So I'm going to share a few things with you today. I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple links in the chat just so we have them ready. And you probably know about some changes that were made to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, previously called food stamps. It is a really important program that helps people access healthy food. And HR 1, which was passed last year, made historic cuts to SNAP that will cut off children, families, and adults across the country from the benefits they rely on to access the food that they need. Already, even before most of those cuts have gone into effect, more than 1 million kids have lost access to SNAP since July of last year, and that number is going to grow. The current Farm Bill is going through Congress right now. That is the bill that funds SNAP and many other things. As it's currently written, it does nothing to restore those cuts to SNAP. That is a huge problem, and we are helping folks to speak up to make sure that their senators know that bill needs to restore cuts to SNAP so that people don't lose access to the food that they need. So I will invite you right now, while we're here hanging out together, to click on that link, the first link in the chat, to take action with our friends at FRAC, which is the Food Resource Action Coalition. Not totally sure what the acronym is. They do amazing work around food access. All you have to do is pop in your information and it will send a letter off to your senators. It is really, really easy. So go ahead and do that right now while we're sitting here together. Love the emojis popping up that people have done it already. I saw some thumbs up, so go ahead and drop some thumbs up either in the chat or as a reaction to let us know that you've taken that action. It is so, so important. And another thing I wanted to share with you a little bit more at the local level is here in Washington State, in the last legislative session, oh my gosh, the sheep in the chat is so funny. Thank you for that. In the last legislative session, our state legislature passed and our governor signed the millionaire's tax, which is a tax on income above $1 million. What that means is that your first $1 million is tax-free, y'all. So if you make less than $1 million, you don't have to pay this tax. Would only be paid by less than 1% of Washington's wealthiest people. And what it will do is it will fund all sorts of things, including K-12 education and especially free school meals for all kids in public K-12 schools all across Washington State. This is a really exciting and important thing that our legislature passed last year, but there's an effort that will be on your November ballot to repeal it. That would take away tons of money from our schools, from meals for kids, and it would blow a giant hole inside of our state budget that would cause cuts to lots of other programs that people rely on to meet their needs every day. So that's why the Coalition on Homelessness has endorsed the No on I-645 effort. That is the fight to keep the millionaire's tax in place. You can learn more about that at the second link that I dropped in the chat a moment ago. And we are really hoping to share information with folks so that we can defeat that ballot measure and keep the millionaire's tax in place to keep funding for schools, for food, for kids, and for all sorts of services intact. We, Coalition, also do a lot of work around helping people experiencing homelessness understand their voting rights and to register to vote and to actually vote. We have a homeless voters guide we just updated this year that is a really helpful guide for folks to understand their rights because people experiencing homelessness can vote. Even if they have a previous felony conviction, that is a really important thing to understand. Not a lot of people know that. We restored voting rights for people with previous felony convictions in Washington State a number of years ago. And so if folks are not incarcerated, they meet other requirements, they are eligible to register and vote. People can also register and vote if they don't have a traditional home address. So they can register and vote, putting their address as a street corner where they spend most of their time, or a shelter, really anywhere that they spend most of their time, they can register and vote with that address. Also drop a link to our email if you want to get in touch with us about engaging with folks experiencing homelessness about their voting rights. We do a lot of work on that, so definitely feel free to reach out if you want to get access to materials or you have questions. We'd love to hear from you. We're also going to share some information at our membership meeting on September 17th at 9 a.m. on Zoom about all of the things that I've talked about. And we'll dive in a little deeper on voting rights in October as well. Okay, that's a lot. I want to also mention, just in closing, something that we don't have an action for today, but we're keeping our eye on, and we definitely want to help people take action on it in the future. Is there recently were proposed some really bad cuts to childcare workers and teachers in the Head Start program, because the administration is considering deregulating Head Start, which means cutting funding for people who are working in Head Start. And that is something that we are really concerned about, and we want to help people speak up against it. So stay tuned. I'll drop also a link to sign up for our emails. That's the best way to keep in touch with us about upcoming ways that you can speak up at all levels of government. We will reach out and let you know. And with that, I will go ahead and pause and see if folks have questions. Hearing no live questions, I will keep an eye on the chat, and I'll pass it back to Christina. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Hallie. That was really inspiring, and some actions we can take, which feels good. We can stay aligned with what is happening. Even though at times it can feel overwhelming, when we're together and we're acting, it feels less so. So thank you for bringing that in. So next, with our time today, we are going to be doing a resource share. And we have about 5 short presentations, about 5 minutes each, and then we'll finish up with some post-survey. So I wanted to see, I can't see all the names, but our first presenter is with Lutheran Community Services Northwest. And Joan, if you're here, you can come off mute, and we have your slide deck ready to go. Yeah. Just give a second. Yeah. If Joan is not ready, curious.
Y'all hear me?
Oh, hi, Justin. Okay,
Hi,
great.
yes. Sorry,
Good to see you here.
I'm stepping in for Joanne today because she's unable to present.
Oh.
So I'll be presenting as the Director of Refugee and Immigrant Services at LCS&W.
Yay, thank you. Okay, the floor is yours.
Right. Want to go, I guess I'll give an overview quickly before we get into the slides. So as I mentioned, my name is Justin Estep. I'm the Director of Refugee, Immigrant Services at LCS&W. We have multiple locations throughout King and Pierce County, and we provide services to both refugees, asylum seekers, and the general immigrant population, depending on the grants and qualifications of the folks seeking our services. If you want to go in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the services we provide. In the context of refugee and immigrant services, our main services are, number one, case management. This is basically helping refugees and immigrants navigate everything from, in the context of today's meeting, how to register for school, or how to look at a bus route, as simple as navigating the local transportation systems, anything basically helping those folks integrate into their new lives here in the United States. We also are participants in the WAMAS program. That's a state-sponsored program for those immigrants that are not covered by Office of Refugee Resettlement programs such as PRIME. Our main area that we help folks under WAMAS is housing support. We can provide temporary assistance for housing for individuals or families for at least 3 months and up to 6 months beyond that, depending on certain qualifications. While we don't have behavioral health services directly within our RIS, we do have a robust behavioral health program that we refer many of our clients to. Includes several things like telehealth in person, children, family, couples. It serves the wide range of behavioral health needs. We also have employment assistance within our organization as well. This is again not directly under RIS, but we work closely with our groups to get folks trained, to help them locate employment, and then assist them with any initial costs that may come, such as purchasing like work boots or things of that nature. And lastly, we have our Immigration Legal Services Program. That is several attorneys and what are called DOJ accredited reps, helping folks across several different grants, whether it's seeking asylum, assistance with petitioning for family members, or if you have a specialized visa, such as those that have been victims of crimes, like a U visa or a T visa. Next slide, please. A little more in depth about our behavioral health and wellness assistance. So all of our staff are trained in trauma-informed care, and we are culturally responsive as we can be, trying to hire a wide breadth of folks that both speak the language of our clients as well as have lived experiences in their communities to try to make those connections as strong as possible. We do have screenings and the ability to refer out should clients need more in-depth assistance. So we partner with groups like HealthPoint, which are actually located within our building here in SeaTac, to make sure that folks have a wide range of partners that they can work with if we are unable to serve all of their needs. And finally, community wellness. We do have several different programs within and without RIS that assist clients, whether that's our AAA study, helping folks that live in and around the airport that are experiencing respiratory issues, getting connected with doctors, going to their homes and providing filters, our community health worker program, as well as our complex medical to help folks, refugees and immigrants that are going through complex medical issues, navigate the insurance, finding the appropriate doctors and medical providers, and assisting with finding suitable transportation if that is a concern. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, under the WAMAS program, we are able to assist folks that need housing assistance that qualify. Basically, the qualifications require that the individual enter the country after January 1st of 2022, and that they are in the process of some degree of becoming a permanent resident or already permanent residents, with special target at those that are going through the asylum process. As many of you probably are aware, when folks come to the country and begin their asylum case, forever it's taken a long time, but even in more recent years, these are 3, 4, even 5-year long cases. And so while they're going through that process, folks usually need assistance, and especially till they can get their work permit. So we help with both rental and move-in assistance. So we will help like pay deposits, application fees, help clients scout out appropriate places to live, as the housing placement part of the slide indicates. We try to work in partnership with different landlords, as well as with non-traditional landlords, such as those folks that might be better suited by living in, let's say, efficiencies or things of that nature, because it keeps them closer to, for example, the schools their children go to, or the other services that they provide. We do also provide case management in tandem with our housing programs, because our goal is to ensure that our clients, once their assistance is complete, that they are able to either access additional assistance while they're still trying to get stabilized, like getting their work permit, or they're able to be self-sufficient once they exit our housing program. And I believe that's it as far as our slides go. We do have, if you want to go to the next slide, if you do have any questions and or referrals, you can reach out to our RIM services email address that is on the slide. Also, you can go directly to our website, lcsnw.org, and go to Refugee and Immigrant Services. We have a link at the bottom of the page for referrals that actually puts your referrals information directly into our client tracking software and goes specifically to our intake specialist so that no one who is referred to us will fall through the cracks. We ensure that at least those folks are contacted to see if they qualify for any of our services. Thank you for letting me present, and I hope to be working with y'all in the future.
Great. Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Joanne, as well for being here and for sharing your resources with the whole group. Appreciate you. Okay. Next up, we have Legal Counsel of Youth and Children for Youth and Children with Devin. And I think I saw Devin earlier, so please unmute yourself and come on in while we get your slides going.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thanks for putting this all together. It's been really helpful. So yeah, as the slide says, I'm an attorney with Legal Counsel for Youth and Children. My name is Devin Glazer. I currently work in the kind of King County area, but we provide services all throughout, well, many different counties with many different areas, and we work a lot with schools. So this is a really great connection to have. Why don't we go to the next slide? So we directly represent youth in legal proceedings throughout Washington. Our youth homelessness program is probably going to have the most overlap with McKinney-Vento and people in schools. But we also work in juvenile dependencies, child welfare, and immigration court. Anyone who is experiencing houselessness or homelessness can be referred to us. And then if they have an intersecting legal issue, we may be able to both do work to address the homelessness or the family insecurity while also potentially representing them in immigration court or helping them apply for a visa. It's probably particularly useful. We are not taking direct referrals for immigration services now because there's a lot of need, but also, I mean, anyone in your care who's under 21 who's facing housing insecurity is probably eligible for special immigrant juvenile visa, which is one of the, I would hate to say anything is easy, but it's one of the still secure ways that people can't get immigration status. So if you do come into contact with youth who are housing insecure and they have immigration status concerns, really great to either contact us or Northwest Immigrant Rights Project. I Sorry, the pop-up happened. We are currently serving youth in King, Skagit, Pierce, Clark, and Thurston. I think in some counties it's just 12 to 18, but in King we do serve youth up to age 24. So that'll both be, middle school, high school students, and then people as they're getting their feet under them. I want to go to the next slide. And I guess two, because that was unnecessary. So you guys are probably aware that there's criminal legal issues. We actually do have juvenile defense section 2. We're growing quite fast, so the slide kind of can't keep up. But most of our work is in the civil legal arena. Civil legal issues can affect like who has the right to make custodial decisions, where you can live, can be a protection order. In our youth homelessness program, we can be pretty creative about what types of legal services we offer because the goal is just to stop, prevent, or make short your time facing homelessness. So in that regard, if someone is older and facing an eviction, we may be able to help them out. If they are already in eviction court, we would send them to like Housing Justice Project or et cetera. But if they are on the cusp of an issue with the landlord, we're happy to help. We do stuff with like guardianships and protection orders. We've helped seal warrants. We have the flexibility to do anything that can actually help a youth who is facing housing insecurity. So in that regard, if someone has a legal issue, and I do talk to a lot of youth where like the only issue they need is they need a house, and like I tell them I can't sue to get you a house. But if they have a legal issue that goes along with being housing insecure, we're pretty creative in trying to figure out how we can represent them and help them out. And sometimes that is just an hour advice, and then we say we can't help you anymore. But sometimes it's name with long legal filing. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, I guess we skipped one. Um, oh, well, here's the referrals. So this we'll go back to the end too, so you can write it down. But we take referrals just via our website, lcycwa.org/need help. Any youth facing housing insecurity, ages 12 through 24, should be directed here, and you can put in referrals for your youth, and we'll reach out normally within a few days. We try to make sure that we are getting in contact with youth, particularly housing insecure youth, quickly because sometimes if you don't talk to them right at the moment they're ready to get help, they become hard to find again. And then the next slide is a few more examples of services we may provide. So some of our more intense cases that in many ways I hope we never see, but we are likely to come into come from referrals from schools where someone is unsafe at home, they may be being abused physically or sexually, and they need an out-of-home placement to find somewhere safe to go. Those are great people to refer to us. Depending on the situation, we may be able to help them file for a minor guardianship where they would then go to a different safe adult, like a extended family member or a safe, trusted friend. We could get protection orders against parents. If they are quite mature and over 16, we've helped youth file for emancipation, which is when you get some of the legal rights of an adult early. It's challenging to do, but it's a thing that we do. If they need help getting services and they want to reunite with their families, we can help them file a CHINS, a Child in Need of Services, and that can often create a temporary, I don't know, zone of protection or so, some legal orders that give you a safe place to be while you figure out how to work with your parents. And then also dependencies where um, if your parents are not able to take care of you and you're, effectively a youth completely unaccompanied with no adults to take care of you and no one you know, we can file and initiate what would have been normally the state would file a dependency if a CPS investigation, goes all the way through. But if for some reason the state is not doing so and the youth really wants to do so, we can file on behalf of the youth. That can also be strategically useful if you are like 17 and a half or so, because you will only be in foster care for potentially a few months, but it does come with extended benefits after you turn 18. So there are some youth who qualify because they are here by themselves with no adults, but we can file a private dependency and then help them get access to the foster care system. Um, so a whole lot, you certainly don't have to have it memorized, but the idea is that like there's a lot of different creative services we can offer, and the intro really is just housing insecure. Let's pop to the next slide too. This is kind of a resource we have on our website, but is often kind of useful for youth, particularly if they don't have access to parents in their lives who can help them make decisions. It's just a youth consent chart. It's really small, so I certainly won't expect you to read it. But things like, can a youth sign a lease? Can a youth agree to medical care? Can a youth enroll in school? We try to make sure that we let youth know, like, these are the things you can do even without a parent or guardian able to sign for you. And we can certainly help people navigate these areas. Um, as I kind of said, we try to be pretty creative. If someone calls us and they're facing housing insecurity and they need help getting a birth certificate or dealing with past debt or just kind of being given resources, we're happy to kind of do that first referral and connect them to a case manager or friends of youth or cocoon house, depending on the county. Um, but if they do actually need like ongoing legal help, we are here for them there, and that I think has been pretty useful, and it's been really great that we have the school districts to coordinate with, because we get some really necessary referrals from school counselors, school therapists, people who witness youth in crisis who need legal assistance. So thank you guys for being there every day, and then we are here to help provide some legal assistance. I think that's the last slide. Yeah. And then I'm also happy to answer any specific questions people have. But as I said, if anyone needs help, if they go to our website, lcycwa.org, there's a giant button that says need help. And that's how we can take in referrals for any youth facing housing insecurity.
Great. Thank you so much, Devin, for going through all that information and for providing some resources on your website. Really appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. Next up is Carson Taylor from Kids Mental Health Washington. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks,
Oh,
Christine.
hi. Great to see you, Carson. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Carson. I use he or they pronouns, and I'm a youth behavioral health navigator with the King County region of the Kids Mental Health Washington program. And I'll wait for the slide real quick. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so this is a statewide program with regional teams across the whole state. The program is called Kids Mental Health Washington, and we'll go to the next slide, please. A little bit of history and background of the program. So this program started in Pierce County as a sort of pilot program. There was a kid who was actually from King County, went down to the Mary Bridge Hospital in Tacoma for behavioral health reasons and ended up boarding in the emergency department for a very, very long time. And that kind of caused just folks in the Pierce County region to really collaborate and think like, how can we prevent this from happening, and how can we break down silos within the behavioral health system and just make sure youth and families are getting the supports they need in their community. So they kind of launched this pilot program back in 2018, 2019 with a steering committee. And then in 2021, Governor Inslee at the time signed an emergency proclamation to essentially roll this program out across the state because there was a significant increase in kids going to the hospital or emergency department for behavioral health reasons. So the program is really a partnership between the healthcare authority who funds us, and then the Kids Mental Health Pierce County who provides some technical assistance across the state, as well as I need to update this, the Developmental Disabilities Administration. They changed their names a few times, but it's kind of a partnership between those entities. Next slide, please. This is just a map to show you kind of how the rollout happened since that 2021 emergency proclamation. So we are now fully up and running across the whole state. Each year after that proclamation, a few more regions got on board. And King, which is where I work, as well as North Sound, were the last regions to get on board. But we're now fully up and running across the whole state with regional teams. Next slide, please. What we offer, this is pretty consistent across the whole state. Again, the idea was to have regional teams because each region has their own needs, gaps, and resources. And so they wanted to have teams that were aware of those and could meet those needs specific to that local area. But each region offers behavioral health resource navigation. So this looks like supporting, connection to services for behavioral health, supporting with care coordination for children and youth that are involved in multiple systems and needing kind of more care transition support, transitional planning, so supporting, and making recommendations for youth that are transitioning from a placement or back into the community from somewhere, whether it was like inpatient, children's long-term inpatient or detention or a shelter, things like that, as well as family engagement ideas. So a lot of times we're getting parents and caregivers connected to peer support. We're getting youth connected to peer support. Maybe the need isn't, traditional outpatient therapy. Maybe they need other social supports. So we're kind of talking with the family about that. One unique thing about our program, we offer multidisciplinary team meetings. I know this term MDT is used in a lot of different ways. What's awesome about this is we bring together partners that aren't necessarily working with the family from across the region to meet directly with them to kind of hear from them, strengths, challenges, what types of supports are they looking for to whether it's get out of crisis or just access local community-based resources. And we meet with them for an hour with the team that aren't necessarily involved to make a plan, to make an action plan and provide recommendations and resources. In those meetings, we really focus on centering youth and family voice and choice, and they're individualized. So each MDT is unique. It's never the same. Each region also has their own website. And so I have a link here to the statewide website as well as the King County regional site. On the statewide website, there's that map that I showed on one of those earlier slides, and you can click on the region that the family lives in and make a referral. But each website kind of serves as a centralized resource hub with information about how to access the local resources to that region. And then it also has a referral portal for the program to get support in these areas. Next slide, please. How to access is pretty consistent across the state. So we serve any school-age child or youth and their family, regardless of insurance status. So they could have Medicaid, commercial insurance, no insurance. To refer, you would go to that region's website, wherever they're kind of staying at the moment, and make a referral through that regional website. Most websites also have a release of information, and so if you're working with a student, it's super helpful if they're right there with you to kind of walk through the release of information. Not necessary, but it does help with the process if you're able to do that. And then what to expect. We reach out to the family within 3 business days. I would say sometimes it's the same day. So typically, I mean, in the King region right now, we're doing 1 to 2 business days. It ranges obviously as we get, less or more referrals. But we also follow up with whoever referred to let you know that we received the referral and get any additional information that we might need. Next slide, please. So just kind of a call to action or just invitation to engage with our program. So you can go to our website, check out the resources. You can make a referral for behavioral health navigation. I work in the King region. We're always looking for more resources to add to our website resource directory. We're also always looking for partners to join our multidisciplinary team meetings. It's a pretty unique opportunity for you to support the families in your region and also grow your own awareness of resources, strategies. You learn a lot from the process, and it's a really transformative process to engage directly with families in that way and be a part of networking and learning and growing. Kids Mental Health Washington also puts on trainings sometimes. Those would be posted on the statewide website. And then again, each region has their own steering committee, which we're working on strategic planning to continue our work. So consider these ways to engage with our program. If you're interested in joining like the MDT team or the steering committee, you can reach out to your local region and just let them know you're interested. But we would love to have you. Next slide. And this is just, I think this QR code goes to the statewide website, and that's my email address. I work for the King region. Gina, who's not here today, works for the Pierce County as well as provides statewide technical assistance. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Carson. It's great to have that statewide regional solution that people are seeking. So thank you for being part of this project and bringing it to the group here today. Yeah, okay. So we have TeamChild left to share, and then we're going to wrap up for today. And yeah, I'm not sure if it's Emily or
Yes, it will
yeah.
be me.
Great.
Sorry, everybody, you're hearing from me again. So I know we're don't have much time left, so I will quickly kind of go through TeamChild and what we do and how to access our services. I don't know. Okay, there we are. So this is our lovely TeamChild team at our retreat last year. You can go next slide. So Perfect. So our mission is to uphold the rights of youth involved or at risk of being involved in the juvenile legal system to help them secure the education, healthcare, housing, and other support needed to achieve positive outcomes in their lives. And achieving our vision requires a bold goal of eliminating the use of youth incarceration across Washington state. Next slide. Our vision is that young people have power and experience unconditional belonging at school, at home, and in their communities. So what we value, we take a youth-centered approach. So that really is, we are guided by the young people that we serve. We give and receive real support and care for ourselves, clients, and communities, and bring our whole selves to work. We operate from an anti-oppression foundation, act with integrity and intentionality, and encourage each other to be better every day. And we operate with anti-racist principles to undo racism and end all intersecting forms of oppression. Next slide, please. So who we serve young people ages 12 to 24, low income if they have involvement in the juvenile legal system, and if they're residing in our four main counties are King, Pierce, Spokane, and Yakima, but we're able to work statewide with youth in their detention boarding cases. So those are the types of cases that I take, and that is for young people who are either in the juvenile rehabilitation system, so juvenile prisons, or in local county detentions, and they cannot be released because they don't have housing. So that is what the detention boarding refers to. And those we can work with young people statewide outside of those four main counties. Additionally, youth who are incarcerated in our JR systems, so that would be like Echo Glen or Green Hill, and then the community facilities. And then also we're able to work with young people who have been released from a JR facility within the past year to support with reentry, or within 6 years of being released to help on record sealing. Next slide. Next, so what we do, legal services is our bread and butter, which we will kind of talk a little bit more about. We do training and consulting, so sort of like this training. We can also do a lot of other different topics. On our website, we have a training request form. So if you ever want training on school discipline, rights for young people who are incarcerated, housing rights, any of those, check our website and you can request a training there. We also do policy advocacy. So we have a policy team that works every year in Olympia on various legislative priorities and to work to kind of better the lives of young people in Washington state. Next. So the legal services that we can support with, these are kind of a long list, but we can kind of be creative as well. So if your specific issue isn't on this list, it might be something that we can support with. We try to be as creative and helpful as possible, but mostly we work with school rights. So school discipline, if a young person is suspended or expelled, we can support them getting back into school. We work a lot with special education, so working on IEPs or 504 plans, enrollment into schools. So that includes McKinney-Vento, young people being pushed into online school, other kind of civil rights that might come up in the education context. And then housing stability is kind of what I work on mostly. So similar, I think LCYC kind of talked a lot about of this in detail, and so we kind of do similar work. So minor guardianships, CHIN's petition, the child in need of services, emancipations, we can support on dependencies, do the power of attorneys, a lot of shelter navigation. We are seeing a big issue right now in Washington state where there are young people who are being forced out of their homes because of protection orders that causes them to be homeless. So navigating how to kind of access housing with a protection order. And then finally, youth who are in detention and they don't have anywhere to release to, whether that be because of just lack of housing, family conflict, or other issues. And our overlap with the criminal and juvenile legal system, we work a lot with public defenders to kind of think creatively about community alternatives to reduce incarceration. We do a lot of post-conviction work, so record sealing or vacating, and reentry planning. And then also we have a team that works directly with the young people who are in our juvenile prison system, and they work with conditions of confinement. So if there are things going on within the prison that our young people need support on, we can help with that, like isolation or other youth complaints. And then reentry we support with, and then also education and healthcare while in the juvenile prison system. Next. So, type of cases that we don't typically take. So, we don't usually support on family law cases except for the kind of limited minor guardianship. So, if there's like a parenting plan or like a custody disagreement, those typically we do not take, but we can refer out. Also, immigration cases or landlord-tenant cases. Sort of, these are kind of the cases that we would refer out. Debtor, creditor, bankruptcy, criminal law. We don't do direct criminal representation, only sort of partnering with public defenders, and then the post-conviction relief or issues. And then other cases where assigned counsel is a right. So, like in dependency cases, we can support young people in filing the dependency petition, but we would typically probably get them an appointed attorney once kind of our role is ended. So those are the type of cases that we don't typically take. Next slide. And then these are just resources for more info, which we can send out with these slides. Next. And next again. And then how to make referrals. So want to preface this with if you're not sure where to start, you're not sure how to refer, reach out. We have an incredible referral intake and advice team that if we figure out that the legal issue that you're facing is something that we can't support with, not a problem. We will help refer and find somebody else who can. Also, if you're able to refer through our referral link on our website. You can email, you can call, any way that you do it, we're going to figure it out. So don't worry about getting it right on how to do the referral. But this is just kind of a flow chart of when to make the referral. So if you're a young person who needs support between the ages of 12 to 24, if you're in one of our 4 main counties, and if you're not, if you've been released from a JR facility in the last 12 months or the last 6 years to get post-conviction relief, or if you're in county detention and you need support. And those are kind of the ways to refer to us if you kind of meet those categories. Next. And here's our contact info. So our general referral information. Again, you can call the line, you can email, you can do our referral form online. All of those are a great way to do it. If you or a young person that you're working with is in a JR facility, then there are specific intake for those. But again, we will navigate that if you don't put it in the right spot. Don't worry about that. And then my contact info and Kim's contact info, and then our general information and our training and outreach request information. And next slide, I will talk about our Youth Action Coalition. So our Youth Action Coalition is a great group of young people who are between the ages of 12 to 24, similar to the young people that we serve, that have lived experience in kind of the legal issues that we see. And they're really great. They go to Olympia, they advocate for policies, they do outreach, they connect with other young people throughout the state. And yeah, it's a really great way to get involved, for young people to get involved in policy advocacy and kind of this type of work. And so yeah, if you know of a young person who you think that would be a good fit for our Youth Action Coalition, please reach out to us. The information is on our website. But again, any information, any email or phone number you see, we'll be able to figure out who to direct it to. So I think that's all I've got for TeamChild.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. I think there might have been somebody in the room. I think their name was Mike, might be a great youth that might be part of this coalition. I might reach out and make that connection. So thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much, Kimberly from TeamChild for helping us with this training today. Thank you so much, Amy Peruse from Everett School District for being our McKinney-Vento liaison and answering those wonderful questions. To our presenters or our mini resource share for bringing in those resources. Really, really, really would love if folks in this moment could take a few minutes to click on the quick post training survey and capture in this moment what you've learned today. You might surprise yourself. You might have some feedback for us. We really would appreciate that because we want to know what is happening for people in this training so that we can reiterate, we can be responsive, and we can serve better in this area. So thank you again. Thank you to our ASL interpreters for your work here today. And thank you all for being in the room and making time to learn more and for your attention and your time. We appreciate it so much. If there are any lingering questions, feel free to email us at the coalition. We'd be happy to do our best to circle back with presenters to see if we can answer them. But definitely we'll be sharing these resources going forward in an email coming to you. So yeah, thank you for all the love in the chat. Please, if you have any questions for us, follow up, contact@homelessinfo.org. And we'd happy to answer those for you the best we can. Also, one last thing, OSPI has a ton of resources on their website and something that is super helpful, community of practice opportunities. These are spaces, thank you, Amy, for putting this in the chat, where you can show up and ask your very specific, very nuanced questions for your family so you can do the best accompaniment that you can do alongside. And so these spaces are for people to ask those questions and get support because we really do this together. There is a wealth of knowledge and wisdom that we can tap into if we just connect and not only learn together, but also act together. So thank you so much for hanging in there a few more minutes. And if you have anything else, we'll stay on for a little bit longer, but thank you. We appreciate you being here today.